Hi everyone, welcome to the Chief Challenge. This is the mailbox. It is the mailbox, and today's challenge is to create this mailbox in 10 minutes. We're going to take a look at the process and let's talk about it a little bit. If you went through the challenge, I'm going to create the base and the top. I'll make a copy of it, but I'm going to use a custom countertop. There's a profile on it. I'm going to use the 3D solid tool to create the brick in between here. We'll rotate it, probably use the transform replicate. Out of the challenge library, we'll grab the mailbox and then we'll go ahead and put a roof on here and then use the 3D solid tool to create and fill that gap. So with that said, let me switch over and let's get ready inside the program. So let me open up the program here. Notice in the bottom right hand corner is my timer. Keep an eye on me as we only have 10 minutes to create this mailbox. So let's go ahead and turn on the timer. And let's begin with a brand new plan. So the first thing I'm going to do underneath our cabinet tool is come down and I'm going to grab the custom countertop, click and drag. While I'm dragging that out, I'm going to go ahead and put the coordinates in at 24 by 24 to create that custom countertop. Now let's go ahead and open up the countertop, and inside the countertop we want to set the thickness of this to be 6 inches and then the height, which the floor to bottom should be at 0. And then on the molding profile, this is the edge profile. Let's go ahead and click Add New. I'm going to go into our bonus library that I've downloaded, and for the edge profiles, let's select the OG profile. We'll set a width of 1 by 6 inches. You see the profile of it there. And then let's go ahead and use the 3D solid tool, and I'm going to create a solid right over the top of this. We'll use our snaps and grab this solid, open it up, and for the solid we'll set the height of this. This will be the brick, 2 1/4 inches, and then from the floor to top we want that at 8 1/4 inches, so that'll sit on top of the 6-inch countertop. So I'm going to use the 3D camera tool. Let's hold our Alt key down to force it into vector mode, and we now have the two objects that we need to apply materials to. So let's begin with a search for stucco. And I'm just going to come down and grab a material out of the stucco. Let's apply that onto the molding, also to the countertop below it. And then for the brick, let's go ahead and do a search for mixed brick. And we'll just grab this gray brick and apply it on there. Now you're going to notice that the offset needs to be adjusted. I want a full brick in there. Let's do that from an elevation view. Figure out the adjustment. And let me redo that view. So let's go ahead and take a straight view on. And I need to turn on the solid layer. Notice that it's not on. So let's just go over into the active layer set. I'm going to turn on all layers. And if we kind of go in there and use our tape measure tool, let's measure this out. And it's right about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to use the adjust material definition tool. And I'm going to come in and let's change that offset. Let's subtract the 0.75, and if we did that right, that should be a good look at it. Now in the camera, what I want to do is I want to take the lower countertop and let's slide a copy of that up. As we slide this up, I'm going to press the tab key, and I want to take and move this up the 29 1/4 inches plus the 6 inches for the thickness of the countertop. So that kind of gives us the top and the base. And then for the brick, let's click on the brick and let's use the transform replicate tool. I'm going to make a copy of this. If you looked at it and competed in the challenge, you probably figured out there was 12 copies. We're going to move that up 2 1/4 inches, and then we're going to rotate that. Our directions here say 7.5 degrees, and that should slide those all the way up. Hopefully the mailman's not going to run into the corner of that when he delivers our mail. Now back in the floor plan view, let's go back into the library browser, and I'm going to come down to the Chief Challenge library, and I provided in the catalog here a mailbox, and let's just go ahead and click and place this mailbox off to the side, turn the layer on, and what we want to do for this mailbox is set the floor to bottom at 41 1/4. That way it will be right on top. Let's zoom in. Let's go ahead and put that approximately in the center. And now what we need to do is put a roof on this thing, and then we'll use a 3D solid to fill in the space. So to create that roof, let's go ahead and go into our roof tools, and let's just double click on the roof plane. And what I want to do before I draw the roof is let's set the pitch to 2 and 12, and then on the options structure, let's adjust the structure because I want to set that to maybe be pretty thin, 1.5 inches. And then let's go down, look at the rest of these items. So the fascia and the rest of these items, let's just kind of make those smaller at 2 inches. Remove the soffits, maybe the gutter, let's delete that. So we should be in good shape. So my roof is kind of set up. Let's go in and actually draw a roof plane. So we'll click and drag, go up slope. Go ahead and turn off the automatic roofs. Let's slide this into place. Get it close. I'm not going to use the dimension tool to make sure it's exact. Then let's go back in and shoot our elevation view. Zoom out a little bit. And there's our beefy mailbox. And if we zoom out further, you can see there's the roof plane. And if we use our dimensioning tool, let's use this. Turn on my crosshairs. Let's slide down and figure out that, that looks like about 55 inches. We need to pull that down. So let's click on a roof, and let's use a transform replicate. Let's use minus 55 inches, and that should put that very close to where we need it to be. Now to fill the space in here, what I want to do is create a 3D solid. So I'm just going to use the CAD tool. I'm going to draw a solid, which is just going to start with a CAD box. Maybe shape that up just a little bit so that we have it in that position. I'm going to convert it to our 3D solid. So we'll convert it and maybe set the depth of it. Let's just pick a number at 17 inches. In our floor plan view, let's make sure that we then position that right over the top of the mailbox, and let's just use our snap tool, pull it in there. In our camera view, you can see where we're at here, and the first thing I'm going to do is probably pull this edge up in this direction, go around the back, and just make sure that we get this pretty close. I'll just grab the corner here and pull that up. And then let's use our material eyedropper color and grab those couple things. And it looks like maybe a slight adjustment on the front. Pull that down just a little bit. And I think we've got it. Let's go ahead and go back into our floor plan view. Let's take our 3D overview that's a standard render. It's looking pretty good. One of the things I like to do. Let's go into our render techniques. Let's turn on line drawing. And we'll just dial that in a little bit. And there is the mailbox. Not bad. Took us a little over 7 minutes. Hope you had fun with that Chief Challenge. And if you did your submission, thanks a lot. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next Chief Challenge.
If you participated in the challenge, thanks. We had a lot of fun. I'm going to announce the winner at the end of our live Q&A. And if you have a question you want to ask it live, you can chat it in. If you would prefer, just go ahead and raise your hand, and when we call on you, you can unmute your microphone, and then we'll take your question live. So with that said, Carrie, are there any questions out there?
We had somebody write in and ask, could you repeat the transform replicate process on the brick one more time?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's just grab the mailbox plan here. And let me grab the other one here. So when you look at the mailbox that we have, that transform replicate can be used for a lot of things. And in this case, we made multiple copies. We used a rotate, and we set the elevation of that rotate as we made the copies up there. And if we go in here, and I'm just going to hold my shift key down, and let's go through, and I'm just going to remove these off the current mailbox. So once I've got the 3D solid in place, and I select it, this transform replicate tool, you notice I also used it to lower the roof down in the session as well. In the lower edit menu is this tool called Transform Replicate. And with the Transform Replicate, there are several items that you can control here. At the top is the copy, and that's where I put in how many copies that I wanted to generate when I use this. Then I use the move operation. So there's an X, Y, and a Z. Z is in the height direction. It could be negative or positive. And I put in the distance or the thickness for the brick itself. So that's a 2-inch slab of brick. And then for the rotation, I think that's a 90-degree rotation. And if you divide that out by 12, it should be 7.5 degrees. There's also a resize and a reflect option. So there's quite a bit of power in this tool. And once you close that dialog, you can see that it automatically generates this for you. It's a pretty powerful tool. A lot of times I'll use this to fill various spaces. You might even use it for electrical. So you could place and use the electrical. You can use the Transform and Replicate tool to then fill a space. And it's a pretty powerful tool. If you haven't used it, consider looking at the details of it for your next design challenge.
Thanks, Scott. Before you used the Transform Replicate tool, you adjusted the brick pattern with an offset. Can you demo that one more time?
Yeah, so if you, let's switch over here. And in our floor plan view, I'd use the 3D solid tool, and I'll just kind of replicate the process and create this solid. So the first thing I did when I'm drawing out this solid, it turns out it's 24 by 24. Before I release my left mouse button, I'll press the tab key. And what that does is it brings up the coordinates. And this is a nice tool because you don't have to use your temporary dimensions and then set the dimension of this both in width and in depth. So with the coordinates in here, I can put in 24, and in this case, I drew it in the down direction, so I'll put -24. That then brings it in. And depending on the elevation and the material you're going to use, so in this case, for this particular solid, we set the height of it 2¼ inches. And then the floor to bottom was 8¼ inches. And then when we take our elevation view, and then we find the brick, let's go out there and find mix brick. And let's spray it on there. And as I zoom in, you can see that the pattern is not adjusted. So if you wanted to have a full brick, a lot of times this is a very nice tool to use, the Adjust Material Definition tool for your showers or backsplashes where you want to start with a full tile, or in this case, a full brick. And the first step in doing this is to determine what is the offset you need to change. And the tool that I used to figure that out was the tape measure tool. And I came in here and measured up and found what the distance was. So measuring from the bottom to that first grout line is 3/4 inch. Then that Adjust Material Definition tool, sometimes called the rainbow tool, is up in my upper menu system. You can click on this, and what it allows you to do, there's a pattern, which is the texture you're looking at behind this dialog. And then the texture itself is the image of the brick. There's an option to keep these two things in sync. So if you're going to make an adjustment on one, it will adjust the other. So that's oftentimes a desired outcome of it. And currently, you can see that there's already a vertical offset in this material that we used of 2¼ inch. You could zero that out and it may work, or what I ended up doing since I measured it is I said -0.75 to 3/4 inch. That adjusts it, and then when I close the dialog, you can see that it then adjusts that texture accordingly. So now I have a full brick, and I did that before I did that Transform Replicate. so that it moved all of those items and they all had the same material and the correct texture pattern where I wanted that brick to start.
Thank you, Scott. We had Sandy write in and she's wondering, what is the reason that you use a countertop for the base rather than maybe a 3D solid?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sandy. So I drew the solid over here, and if I come over here and I use the countertop tool, and we just kind of drag in a countertop. Let me just set the thickness of it so that it's at least thick enough, and then we'll set the floor to bottom at 0. So when you're looking at this in the view over here, the item on the left is the countertop, and then the brick slab next to it on the right in the middle here is a 3D solid. And one of the options that a countertop has over a 3D solid is you can assign a profile to it. And if you look at the bottom of the mailbox here, you see the profile on the countertop. And inside of the countertop itself is a molding panel. That doesn't exist on the 3D solid, that panel. So what I ended up doing, which saved me a little bit of time, was on the molding panel, I came in and we provided a molding profile for you. There's a bonus library and a core library of edge profiles for countertops that you can choose from. I made a copy of the OG profile, and then I ended up setting the width and the height of that at 6 inches, and that assigned a profile. Now, I know some of the submissions used a 3D molding to generate the profile. That's also pretty easy as long as we're in here. And what I could do is since I've already drawn the 3D solid, I could make a copy of that and then convert that into a molding profile so I don't have to be exact when I draw this. And when I convert that into a molding profile, I'm just going to use convert in the middle bottom of my screen here, convert to a plain polyline. And then when I convert that, I can come in here and choose that it's a molding polyline. You can also use a 3D molding polyline, which just simply means in addition to it being horizontal, it could also go vertical. So once you convert that to a molding profile, then you can set the height of it, and then kind of the same process, you can go out and choose the molding profile. And if we just go out and grab the exact same OG, and then I think we said 1 by 6. So a few steps to do that, and we go back into the camera view. It looks like I actually converted didn't make a copy of it. And then you notice the molding's going on the inside, and one of the options I didn't choose was to extrude inside, so that will extrude it outside. And then that's how you can convert that molding. And it looks like when I converted that, I didn't actually make a copy of it, so I just come back in here and draw another solid in there, and we just set that back to the height of 2 1/4 inches, and it should look okay when we go back into the view. Set that back to 8. So that's kind of the process, and the countertop's just going to give you the ability to get the molding. I was in a bit of a hurry to try to get that done in 10 minutes, and I like the option to be able to set that profile automatically for the object itself, and that's why I used a countertop.
Thanks, Scott. We have a follow-up question from Albert, wondering why didn't you use the countertop tool for the brick portion instead of the solid?
You certainly could have. I was trying to show off multiple tools. There are times when the material mapping for countertops is not as easy to coordinate on the back side of the countertop. So sometimes on the back side, the brick mapping, if we were to rotate all the way on the back side, sometimes there's issues the way the program handles that, because typically the countertop may be against a wall, and sometimes that mapping may be an issue. And I just ended up using a 3D solid tool because I wanted to show the difference but you certainly could have used the countertop tool to have accomplished all of the rotated brick in there.
Okay, great. Our last question is from James. Can you demonstrate how the roof was generated?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, James. So there's a few ways that you can generate this roof. I ended up using the roof tool. It's already got the slope built into it. I had to adjust the thickness because it's for a mailbox, not a house. And I saw some of the submissions that came in that used a 3D solid, and very effective to do it that way as well. So when I created this roof, as we go in here and look at this will be easier to do in the plan view here. So underneath the roof, and let's just kind of look at some of the settings I changed in there. So the first thing I did was I changed the pitch to 2 and 12 because I'm going to draw a shed roof. And then most of the template plans in Chief Architect, I think, may include automatic roofs. So when I manually drew the roof, it prompted me to turn it off. So with the pitch at 2 and 12, I then went into the structure. I mentioned I lowered that structure, probably the default's 9 1/4. So I just lowered that so that it's only 1.5 inches thick, and probably a good idea to turn off the soffits. And then for the fascias, you know, I didn't want that to protrude too far down, set that pretty low. And then any other things that may have been out there, I think the default had a gutter on it. I removed the gutter. If you have a shadow boards, you know, obviously want to turn that off. So once the defaults were set, then I used that manual roof tool. And the way those roofs work manually is you click and drag on the outside of the wall, then you click up slope. That generates the roof. That's going to generate it at room height. So for this mailbox, it's going to be quite a ways up here because our default room height is likely 9 feet. So then all I did was use the transform replicate, move that down the amount that I'm going to measure. You could also open up the roof. So using that tape measure tool, what I did was come down and I measured about where the top of that mailbox was. Let's call that maybe 67 inches or so. So 2 ways you can do it. One, you could open up the roof or click on the roof, use that transform replicate tool, and in the Z direction, minus 67 inches, that will pull it down. Or undo that. You could go into the roof itself, lock the pitch, and then we could subtract, let's pull that down slightly more, 68 inches. And then that will also pull the roof down. So a couple different ways you can adjust the roof. Now, if you're using a 3D solid, it's actually maybe even faster than what we did. So using the 3D solid tool, I'm just going to click and drag right in here a 3D solid. And let's just make it a little bit bigger for the overhang. So now we have this 3D solid, and with the one of the bottom edges or the top edges selected, there's a make parallel tool. And the make parallel tool can be on a per edge basis or on a per object basis. And let's just look at it. So you can rotate either the selected edge or the entire polyline. And if I select the entire polyline, I can then rotate the thing. We can pull it down so that it's right on top of the other solid that I used to fill the gap. And then probably in the floor plan view, we just need to pull this guy back. Let's pull that back so that it adjusts. And that is probably a faster way to generate that roof. And then you just change the materials, pull it down, adjust that. So that's a pretty quick way to use the 3D solid tool to generate a custom roof plane. Of course, in building a house, you would get no framing, so this wouldn't really be a great tool to use for house, shed, whatever it is. So hopefully that helps with the roofing question.
Thank you, Scott. I think that's all the questions we have today.
So one of the things that periodically comes up, if I just had an image here that I wanted to show real quick. Pull that over. A lot of you are probably more designing, homes or interior spaces. And since today's session was on mailboxes, hopefully there was a few tips you could pick up that you can use for your typical design process. But in these couple of images here that I have open, I've used the larger house and then converted it to a symbol and used it as a mailbox. So just briefly to show that process and how you might do that, if I were to open up a variation of a plan, and this is an entire house, and you look at this as an entire house, what I did here is I made a slight modification. I put a big garage door on the side of the house, and then underneath of it, I used the solid tool as a cylinder that would act as a post, and then I also used the solid tool to act as the mailbox flag. But this house is probably 75 feet wide by 40 feet deep. So working it out as a mailbox, what I did is I converted it to a symbol. You can go into the tools menu, come down to symbol, convert it to a symbol, and we just give it a name here. And there's some advanced options. Probably just make it a exterior furnishing, and probably don't need to show the advanced options. That now goes into my private library. You see a preview of it, and now I can place that, and the only thing I really need to do is shrink it. And so sometimes take a little bit of trial there, but if you open up that that object, we can go in there and adjust it, and it may be easy just to open the symbol up and or use the transform replicate since we're talking about it. So in the floor plan view, if I place this guy, he's going to be pretty large. So let's zoom out. You can see how large it is in comparison. And then if I use the same transform replicate tool, then I can resize that pretty substantially. Let's try 0.05. And let's just stick him over near the plan we're working on. Go back into the camera view and make sure that we turn the layer on that would have all layers. So there's a pretty quick way to make a copy of the house you're working on as the mailbox and make it a symbol using the transform replicate option, and you can shrink him down and create a custom mailbox. So kind of a fun little tip there. So any other questions, Carrie, before we move on and announce the winner?
That's it for today, Scott.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks everybody for attending today's session. If you submitted for the challenge, I hope you had fun. Couple things that I wanted to point out. The first one is I wanted to do an honorable mention for submission, and this was for Renee Rabbit. And he is with Rabbit Designs out of Oakland, California, and pretty fun. If you look at this, you can see that he actually went into the detail and opened up the mailbox doors. So looks like Renee is a pretty sophisticated user to understand that process. So honorable mention to Renee. Thanks a lot for your submission. And the next one here, let's go ahead and this is our first place winner. And this is from Kelly Garrity from Kelly Garrity Creatives, and it looks like she is out of British Columbia. If Kelly happens to be out there on the webinar today and feels comfortable with it, maybe just raise your hand there and we can unmute your microphone. You can give us your tips on what you went through to create your mailbox and why it came out looking so darn good. Are you out there, Kelly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey, Kelly. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Hey, good looking mailbox. Tell us about it.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Lunch and learns are terrific. Even if
Yeah.
you think you know a lot, you always pick up new tips.
Uh-huh.
So
So,
I didn't use the countertop. I actually played with it doing both ways, but I used a 3D solid and applied the molding separately.
Yeah.
And I used the 3D solid. Actually, I used two of them so I could apply a different material and show the seamed metal roofing on the top.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it looks really great. Nice job. And let me just pull this up. We're going to be sending you a Chief Gear Kit.
I think my husband's already put dibs on the hat.
Yeah, well, don't let him take the Yeti mug.
I won't. I won't.
Yeah, this is our collector edition. So Chief Architect, the company, had its 30-year anniversary this year. We did a special commemorative Yeti mug, and then playing cards and a construction pencil, and of course the hat that you'll have to arm wrestle him over.
Well, thank you so much. That's terrific.
Thanks a lot for your submission. Congratulations.
Well, thank you for putting these on. The support with you guys on this product is awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. So next week, we're going to shift gears a little bit and move back inside the house. So this will be the Round the Island project. So a few cabinets in here and then a pretty uniquely shaped custom countertop for the island. So we would be doing this live next Thursday, same place, same time. So if you have the opportunity and want to participate in that, that'd be a lot of fun. A few other things that we have coming up to share with you before we let you go real quickly. Already mentioned that next week we'll be doing the kitchen island, and then the next two coming up would be the she shed and doghouse. Apparently only one quote on the doghouse. And a couple of fun projects. They will get more difficult as time goes on. I'll be interested to see if we can actually get them done in 10 minutes ourselves. In addition to our challenges, we have a virtual training class coming up, a couple of these. So there's an introductory residential and intermediate class. And then we also have a kitchens and bath classes. So those are going to be starting up in mid-October. And actually next week, the first class will start for the residential introductory class. These are online. They're spread across 4 days, 4 hours a day. So it's an easy way to take advantage of our training program from the convenience of your own location. And then if you're a little bit newer to Chief Architect, we have a boot camp for residential design, focused on residential design. That is going to be tomorrow. You can go to the website and sign up for it. And then in a couple more weeks, we do the same variation of that boot camp for kitchens and baths, and that will be on the 21st. We're going to also be at the Builder and Kitchen and Bath Show in Las Vegas. This is in the end of January, 1st of February. We're going to be doing training there, and this is in-person training. And so that will be immediately following the show. We'll be doing the residential and kitchen and baths, both in introductory and intermediate. So with that, that's really all I had today. I hope you will join us next week for the kitchen island, and have a great day. Thanks for attending and submitting if you participated in the Chief Challenge, and hopefully we'll see you back here, same place, same time next week.